All right, so maybe not everybody, but I don't think you can argue that based on the number of Relic guitars that the Fender Custom Shop produces against the number of closet classic or clean finishes they produce, tells the story. And that story is that the majority of players do like Relic finishes. So if you're in that camp that says, that's the dumbest thing ever, you should Relic it yourself, I think that's lame, I don't want one of those, I'd never buy one of those, you're absolutely entitled to your opinion, but you're absolutely in the minority as well. So I want to get into what is appealing, at least to me, about Relic finished guitars. And I believe it's probably a lot of the same reasons that you are drawn to them as well. But before I do that, I would love to ask you to take a second to subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be producing more content that I think is engaging and that might spark some fun conversation with you guys. So please subscribe, and also click the bell icon to be notified when I produce new videos, release new videos, so that you can join in on the conversation, and I really hope you do. All right, so let's take a little field trip to Wildcat Guitars in Escondido, California, my favorite shop, and they have a great selection of Fender Custom Shop guitars. Let's take a look at them and see how many of those are Relics. So definitely no shortage of Fender Custom Shop Relic guitars here, and I would suspect that most Fender Custom Shop dealers would be the same way. So for me, there's basically three things about Relic guitars that really draw me to them. And I'd have to say that I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to feel the same way, because I think they're kind of universal things. So this is my 1952 Fender Custom Shop Heavy Relic Telecaster. Amazing guitar. This is probably my favorite guitar in my collection at the moment. So the first reason that I'm drawn to these guitars is probably like a lot of you, I love vintage guitars, and I would love to own a collection of vintage guitars. But like I'm sure a lot of you, finances don't allow for that to happen. So I don't personally have $30,000 plus to go buy a real early 50s Telecaster. Some of you may be in a different situation, but I think a lot of you are probably in the same as me, where it's like, nah, I really couldn't drop that kind of money on one guitar. Not to mention the fact that as a gigging player, if I had a real 52, if this was a real 52, I would never take this guitar out of the house. I'd be way too afraid that something would happen to it or it would be stolen. So it would just sit in the house. I would play it at home and it would be amazing to own, but I couldn't really use it for what it's meant to do, which is get out there and play music. So here is my Journeyman Relic 52 reissue Blackguard, which you can see has substantially less wear on it than my two-tone Sunburst. And I love both these guitars. They're both great. And this I wanted to showcase for the second reason that I feel like a lot of us are drawn to these guitars. And that is just the players they represent. If you're I'm 52, if you're my age or around my age, we came up in the era of the larger-than-life rock god guitar players, right? Those guys that we associate with a lot of these guitars. Whether it's Eric Clapton, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix, Roy Buchanan, Keith Richards, guys that made these old Fender guitars famous. And a lot of it, the reason that we started playing guitar in the first place were a lot of these songs that we heard on the radio or on records or vinyl that made us want to play in the first place. These songs that have endured and are, like, will stand the test of time. For instance, this guitar. Now, a Blackguard Telecaster could represent a lot of players, but for me, this represents my love of Mike Campbell and the early Heartbreaker stuff. I know Mike has played a plethora of guitars in his career, but this is kind of how it started for him. You know, he got that old broadcaster when he came to Los Angeles, when they were recording the very, very first albums as Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. So this guitar really inspires that for me, and it evokes that whenever I see it. And I don't know, maybe in a way it brings out some creativity because of that reason, and I think that's pretty cool. And the third reason, which arguably might be the most important of the three, is that this guitar being brand new and a 52 reissue will arguably play better than a real 52. With a 9.5 inch fretboard radius, it's a little more comfortable to play. I typically don't like really flat fretboard radiuses on Fenders. I don't know why. 12 inch on a Gibson feels right, of course, but 9.5 is about as radiused as I like on a Fender. And the 7 1/4, to be honest, I don't really mind it that much anyway. But if I have my choice, this slightly flatter fretboard radius feels great. And really the frets, the 6105 frets feel amazing under your fingers versus the, you know, the very, very small Fender fret wire that came on the vintage Fenders. So certainly the playability aspects of this guitar, married with the vintage aesthetic that we all love, is a total win. And you know, if you take this, some guys will say like, oh, I'd rather just buy an American Standard Telecaster and put all the honest playware on there. Well, sorry to break it to you, but if you buy a brand new USA Fender Telecaster, it's going to have a poly finish on it, so you're never going to do this to it, ever in a million years, because the finish is not designed to do that. Nitrocellulose lacquer wore in this way because it continues to shrink over time. It gets checking in, and it does all the super cool things that we love about vintage guitars. A poly finished guitar is not going to do that. So you would have to play it for 10 lifetimes to get any wear at all like that on there. So that's not a thing really necessarily that you're going to do. You're not going to wear out a new Telecaster yourself. Now, if you were to buy a Fender Custom Shop in a Closet Classic finish or with a nitro finish that had no Relic on it, yeah, certainly. If you have the time to play 8 hours a day, 360 days a year, you know, taking maybe just that 5 days off to take a little break, you might get that much wear on your guitar over time. But the majority of us that have families and full-time jobs are not going to be able to play enough to wear a guitar to this extent, honestly. So there you go. The second thing is these Relic guitars, they just feel more comfortable than, to me at least, and probably a lot of you guys, than does a regular USA Fender, you know, American Standard Tele or Strat. The finish being worn off the back feels great. It's much more comfortable playing. It doesn't feel gummy or sticky. The fretboard edges are nicely rolled. They're not sharp. There's just a lot about these guitars that I feel are you know, more comfortable and easy playing than a standard USA Tele or Strat. Your mileage may vary, but that's kind of how I feel, and I think a lot of guys feel the same way, and that's why they're buying these. So those are just some basic thoughts on why I think these are popular guitars. I'd love to hear your ideas. What is it you love about your Relic Fender Custom Shop, Tele or Strat? And I guess it doesn't even really have to be Fender. I mean, we could talk about Murphy Lab, Murphy Age Gibsons, or, you know, if you have a favorite boutique guitar that's Relic. What is it about the relicing thing that appeals to you? I'd love for you to comment below. Let's talk about that. And for you guys who are like, I can't even believe we're having this conversation, that's the dumbest thing that's ever come along. Well, it's been around since 1995, so almost 30 years, and shows no signs of slowing down. So it's definitely caught on and has a very, very large audience of players. So, but if you hate it, I'd love to hear why you hate it, and I'd love to talk about that too. So, all right, so comment below. Make sure that you subscribed. Make sure you click that bell icon. And let's get into some discussions about what is so cool about Fender Custom Shop Relic guitars.